Hi everybody, welcome back to Hive Reads, and welcome back to the last part of our story from A Phoenix First Must Burn. The story is called Melie. It is by Justina, Ireland, and we are at the point where Melie, who is training to be a sorcerer, realizes that the sorcerer she's been training under has basically been scamming everybody, and is about to help her kingdom be invaded, basically. So she's the only one who knows this. She went into the mountains to find a dragon. Turns out Lyle, the boy she met there, is the dragon. So her and Lyle are now on a mission to save her country from the High Sorcerer. Okay. The dragon elders were more than happy to follow me down into the more populated part of Cladonia. It turned out that while they lived a very good life in the mountains, they were quite bored. "We haven't had a single battle in at least 50 years, cried one of the older dragons, who looked like the kind of nice old lady who would bake cookies for everyone in the village. I miss the crunch of bones. I wondered if I was making a mistake bringing a pride of dragons into Cladonia. There was nothing in the treaty that said they couldn't fly toward the bay. And so I scrambled up on Lyle's back and hoped that I was right, even though it meant that my country was being invaded. As the dragons came into sight of the bay, it quickly became clear that my hunch had been correct. Ships fired on the castle complex, the sounds of screams and fighting coming from inside the complex itself. "We have to destroy those ships," I yelled at Lyle, and he let loose a low bellow that the rest of his pride echoed. An amethyst dragon with emerald eyes and two other smaller ones peeled off towards the ships, and as Lyle tilted towards the castle complex, flames were already engulfing the sails and masts of the invaders. "Can you put me down in the center of the castle?" I wasn't sure what exactly I would do, but one of the books had told of a spell for repelling invaders. I was hoping it was still active, because I now had no doubt that Hansen was a part of this. I had to stop him before this invasion became an all-out war. Lyle landed softly in the middle of the main court, which was eerily abandoned. It was usually the source of much activity, and the absence of people frightened me. "Halt!" cried men in a livery I didn't recognize. Their pale skin marked them as not from Cladonia, and their speech was rough and harsh. They stormed the court and flashed swords that caught the sunlight. Lyle took a breath, but before he could unleash a fiery blast at the soldiers, an incandescent blue light hit him, shifting him from his dragon form back to the boy I'd met in the moonlight. "Lyle!" I cried out. Hansen walked out from behind the soldiers, Ernst by his side, their faces smug. Hansen's usual vacant expression had been replaced by a sneer. "Oh, Melie, it's too late. We control the castle, and there's nothing you can do." Well, at least he'd finally gotten my name right. Lyle was on the ground next to me, and I fell to my knees beside him. "Are you okay?" "Yes, it hurts to have the transformation reversed like that, but I'll be fine." I took a deep breath. I was going to believe in myself, even if I just wanted to curl into a ball and sob. "Okay, I have a plan. I'm going to need you to run toward the gardens. Can you do that?" The soldiers moved toward us, and Lyle nodded. Without warning, he jumped to his feet and ran toward the flowering arch that was the entrance to the palace complex gardens. The soldiers were stunned for a moment, but then chased after him, Hansen and Ernst on their tails. After all, Lyle was a dragon. I was just an apprentice with unremarkable abilities. Which one of us was the greater risk? But I was also a girl who had read the entirety of the spell section in the Royal Library. I ran toward the Liberation Fountain in the center of the court and away from the direction that everyone else had gone. Perhaps Hansen's teacher had suspected what the sorcerer was about and hadn't told him about the true use of the fountain. Or maybe Hansen's translation had actually been wrong, not just wrong to protect the knowledge from aspiring sorcerers like me. Either way, I jumped into the fountain, sliced my palm on the sharp horn of the unicorn rampant in the middle of the sculpture, and said, "By my blood, by my heart, defend Cladonia from those who would tear her apart." The book I'd read had said the spell was meant to be a last-ditch effort against invaders, triggered by the blood of the High Sorcerer of Cladonia. I'd banked on that part being an embellishment, and that any Cladonian would do. And I was right. What it hadn't said was that the spell would unleash a herd of very angry, very murderous unicorns. The unicorn rampant at the top of the fountain shook its head and charged off the marble pedestal, heading right for the gardens. A few others ran into the castle complex itself, and the sound of screaming and swords clattering to the ground echoed from every corner. I had, it seemed, unwittingly unleashed a bloodbath. Whoops. I sat in the courtyard and watched as the unicorns tore every last soldier to pieces, and tried to remember that if not for the enchantment, it would have been us. It didn't much help. Lyle came back from the gardens, covered in blood. He sat next to me on the edge of the fountain. Wow, he said, eyes kind of wide. Yeah, I murmured. Cladonia would be safe, but I couldn't help but feel sorry for the soldiers being torn asunder by beautiful horned horses. After about a turn of the hourglass, the unicorns returned to where I sat. One by one, they bowed their head in salute and retook their place on the fountain, some of them shrinking and twisting so that they were little more than hand-sized engravings. I closed my eyes, but every time I shut them, I saw soldiers being run through by beautiful golden horns. I was going to have nightmares for months. People started to come out of the buildings, some badly injured, but most were okay. They saw me sitting on the marble bench, hand bloody, and began to murmur. "Who set the protectors free?" came a reedy cry near the double doors. The crowd of people parted, and an old man with very dark skin, wearing heavy robes, limped toward me. I did? Sorry? I suddenly felt very, very bad about releasing the unicorns, although I had been entirely correct about Hansen being awful. The old man's eyes widened, and a smile split his face. "It's the sorcerer, foretold by the prophecy." The crowd erupted into cheers, a few people even crying. I took a step back, and Lyle was right behind me. It had been a long day, and while I was ready to believe in myself, this was entirely too much. "Hey, so I know a really cool place up in the mountains if you want to get out of here," he said. "We could watch the leaves change." I didn't know what the prophecy was, or why people were suddenly celebrating, especially when the courtyard was still pretty full of dead soldiers. But I knew a good offer when I heard one. I turned to Lyle and nodded. "Let's go." The end. So that is Melie, again by Justina Ireland, from this collection, A Phoenix First Must Burn, edited by Patrice Caldwell. And I recommend this book if you're into fantasy, sci-fi. There's some romance in here. It's really a whole assortment of short stories by 16 different authors. So there it is. Thanks for joining me. I hope you enjoyed the story, and we will see you next time. Bye.